Hi, I'm going to go through some mouthpiece tests. I'm just using the microphone on my phone because the conclusions I'm going to draw don't have a lot to do with the full frequency spectrum, so I'm not worried about a high quality audio recording. I have a few notes, but mostly this is unscripted. I've got a rack of I think 9 mouthpieces. Each of them are paired up with a favorite reed. I'll switch some reeds between them to draw some points, and I use some graphics that I'll edit in to try to clarify some of the differences between the mouthpieces. This is my Leblanc paperclip contrabass clarinet. It's a 1973. I had one previous to this that went down to low D. This one goes down to low C. It was a little older than this one, and I like this one better, so this is the one I ended up keeping. Before you get to your final mouthpiece, you really have to have it, regulated really well. Early on when I was learning to play this, every time I found a new leak, it changed all my choices for mouthpieces and reeds, and I had to do them all over again. So, and it's a nightmare to get it regulated. So this one's in pretty good shape. It helps if you can do a lot of the work yourself. I mean, you use a pro for some of it, and then do some of the minor stuff in between to keep it working. But there's just so many mechanisms on here. So the pads have to seal, and it has to be regulated, and the octave key is a real mess. So, but luckily it's a very compact instrument. Once you get it right, it's a lot of fun to play. Mostly, I prefer synthetic reeds. This is on my other woodwinds too. Part of that is from me doubling. It's hard to keep them wet, but also it's just that you fall in love with a cane reed, and they don't last very long. So I'd rather get a good synthetic reed that they could last years. So that's what I mostly have, but I'll throw in some cane reeds also. This is my favorite setup as of now on this instrument. I made this myself. It's a 3D printed design. Most of my mouthpieces that I'll be playing are ones that I made up. So, and I'll play this a couple times, but I just wanted to start out with this to give you kind of a baseline. It's a fairly dark design. I call it my cave. It has sort of a concave baffle, and then I have a Leger reed on here, a 2.5. I've used 2 1/4, 2.5 mostly. Typical torture test, my typical torture test is to play the Cello Suite No. 1 by Bach, which I run out of air very quickly on that, but it illustrates between the break jumps, whether or not a mouthpiece, reed combination, and embouchure can handle it. So it goes like this. So this one can handle the jumps. Some of the other ones I'm going to play can't. You'll get a lot of chirping. The other thing I listen for is a clarity in mostly 3 different spots. One is the right hand above the break where the octave key switches, looking for some clarity of those notes. The other is the very high B. Up in that area, you don't play up there much. Low notes. Sometimes the lowest couple notes just don't have enough tone that you can even tell the pitch apart. So, okay, that's the first mouthpiece. My goals mostly have been to make an easy transition from regular bass clarinet to contrabass, because in the ensembles I play in, it's wind symphony music, about all wind band. About a third of the pieces have a contrabass clarinet part. The rest I have to play bass clarinet. So I want to be able to have a mouthpiece that's easy to adjust to. I don't want it to chirp. I'd like to be able to play long whole notes, you know. I can cycle breathe some, but some of the long, you'd like to be able to not to run out of breath so much. And because of that, I used to mostly favor trying to get small tip mouthpieces to work for me. And so I spent a lot of time doing that. And then later I found out, well, you know, large tips don't take that much more air, and I'll give you some of my theories why that is. But I'll start out with the mouthpiece that came with this instrument is probably something called, it's like a wide Leblanc. And I have one of those here. I've seen 2 or 3 of these. They have different facings on them, so you know, you may need to get a facing adjusted. But here's a wide Leblanc, and this is the one that came with this instrument. The window was actually too wide, and my rails, the reed barely would cover from side to side, so I actually added some epoxy on the inside to thicken up the rails on the inside. So, and I like to play this with a Ligier 2.5. So I've got to find out where I have that. Oh, I haven't had it on the mouthpiece I just played. That's why I started taking it apart. Now, the problem with this mouthpiece being how it's wide, it's a large mouthpiece, it's fat in your embouchure, so it doesn't pass my test for being easy to go between bass clarinet and contrabass, but it's a good mouthpiece. Just rich sound, just playing what I want to play, but reading my torture test, it doesn't do as well. It's got a little whistle, like it almost wants to chirp. I have to be careful that you know, I choose the right embouchure on it. But you know, it's one I'm going to keep, but not use a whole lot as of now. I may explore it again later. One of my future goals is to get a tone that sounds more like a bass clarinet in certain registers, just like for a bass clarinet. One of the goals I have, and can do it now is to make the middle and upper register of a bass clarinet sound more like a soprano clarinet. Okay, so that the other LeBlanc I have is a Leblanc Narrow, and this came with actually I have this is a 1973 instrument. I have a 1976 E flat paper clip, smaller, and this came with that instrument. Now I don't know if these is original equipment or not, but that's just my observation. I use a fiber cell medium on this. It's a medium hard, not a fiber cell, a fibra reed. Okay. Now, these fiber reeds is what I started playing on when I first got the instrument, and they are virtually chirp proof, so they were my favorite. But I tended to, because I still had a bunch of leaks, I tended to use a medium soft, and I loved it, but it made me play flat. I used to blame the instrument and the mouthpiece, but my embouchure was just too loose. So gradually I trimmed that up a little bit. I worked myself up to mediums and medium hards on these, which are better. All right, so this is the LeBlanc Narrow. A little louder. That's unusual. I said they're chirp proof and I'm chirping. So, I said virtually chirp proof. You still can happen. There's two other factors that I've found can aggravate chirps. Your instrument, and actually three or four. There's your instrument quality. You can have leaks. Your embouchure, how you're playing, the reed choice, and then the last one is the height of the baffle, just near the tip rail. That's a big deal. That's one of the main points, along with reed choice, that I wanted to cover today. So that's another point of reference there. Okay, then I have a Fobes Debut. These are, I believe, made from Babbitt made blanks, because I've purchased some Babbitt blanks myself. They look identical to me. They're very similar to the Leblanc Narrow. I used to think they were the same, but the Narrow Leblanc is a hard rubber mouthpiece and these are plastic, and there are some minor geometric differences. But this is probably a standard school instrument, mouthpiece choice. But it's probably played with a cane reed, and I find this fiber reed medium to be a good match with it. Oh, this one I never sanded down the cork because I guess I'm hoping to sell it. It's not much different than the ones that I reface, so. Okay. So it works with that reed. Now I was gonna play one of these with a cane reed just to show you how it differs. And this would happen on any of these mouthpieces. I have, you know, Van Doren number 3s. That I've actually trimmed them up a couple times. They just felt softer. You know, I like Legier's 2 1/4, 2 1/2, and the 3s felt softer. So I've taken a couple of trims on it, and I've chosen the best out of 3 that I unwrapped out of the box. So this is a cane reed on this debut. And it has a nice sound, but it chirps for me. Trying to find a good embouchure before I run the torture test. I'm not sure I'm going to get one. That's the best I've done on that. Normally it chirps every time I go across the break. So if you can lock in on an embouchure that works, that's great, you know, but with a cane reed, I find that window is very narrow or not at all on mouthpieces, especially if they have a high baffle. And this one's just got a rollover in it. It's not real high. But still, you know, with time I could do better on that, but if you're just going to pick it up after playing bass clarinet for a while, you're asking for trouble. So I just think that's not a great way to go. But if you're going to specialize in contrabass, you know, and going for tone, maybe you can, you know, explore them more. I may explore it more in the future. And I'll try that on some other mouthpieces. This is a Babbitt blank that I worked on. I use a medium hard fiber reed on this. There we go. And this has, you know, a fairly, you know, the same rollover as the debut, but I lowered the baffle kind of into, you know, going into the throat. You know, it didn't fix the chirps, but it did, you know, give it a little bit of a richer sound. But, you know, I was playing on this for quite a while, since it was one that I worked on, and I kind of wanted to give it a longer trial. Yeah, see, different embouchure, it sounded fuzzy, then I adjusted it, it sounded clear. So, did okay across that. It's a little stuffy, but it's got that darker, you know, tone to it because it's a little stiffer reed than I prefer on some other setups. But I enjoyed it for a while. Then something neat happened. I decided to buy one of Jared DeLeon's creations. It's a 3D printed mouthpiece that has a very large tip opening. It's labeled 3 millimeters. That's probably at the very tip. I measure mine inside the tip rail. So it's about a 2.8 millimeter tip opening inside the tip rail, whereas I was playing on a 1.8 millimeter. So this is a jump up. And I avoided large tip openings because I didn't want to use a lot of air. Well, I found out with this has an extremely long facing curve. While my facing curves were like in the 50s, this is in the 70s. That's millimeters times 2. So I would have never thought to to have gone that far, but it works, you know. And so I got one of these, and it kind of created a new mindset, a paradigm shift of what was possible and what could work. Now the reason I think it doesn't use that much more air is because with this long facing length, your embouchure actually closes off some of the tip a little bit when you start a note and playing. And that's usually a bad thing on the smaller woodwinds because it'll create pitch instability. You'll be hunting all over. On contrabass clarinet, it seems to be fair game. I haven't had an issue with that, and the extra wide tip makes it clear across the break. I was real happy with it. So this is with a Leger 2 1/4. That the low notes have a clarity to them that you can pick out the pitch, so that's nice. I think that's pretty clear. It's a little buzz, but not much. So all that works, and I'm not using tons of air, so this is a winner. Made me wonder, like, do I need to go from 1/8 to 2/8 in tip opening to get that? So, and do I need to go from the 50s to the 70s? So I started experimenting with my own 3D printed mouthpiece design, and it was more or less based on halfway between those points. I'll put the tip openings out there, and halfway between those facing length changes. And I think I found a nice medium that I like. That's better than the other, either one of the other two. So I started with something I call a wave design. I made a lot of these. I started even making them with cork tenons, and later I started adding O-rings, which are much easier to get working. So yeah. This is a fiber reed medium on this also. Now the wave design is higher. It's got a high baffle here and then it lower inside, but it's subtle. I mean, it's not extreme. It's just a little. And when this came off the machine and I faced it a little, I was amazed. I was like, I can't believe that my first prototype was working. Well, I did modify the wave design slightly. I took a little bit more of it out for this one, but the first one was playable. And it has very good projection. It will chirp on a cane reed, but it can be buzzy there, but adjust your embouchure. And the wave baffle allowed me to put a more extreme duckbill on here, so it's it may even be a smaller bite than my bass clarinet. I was trying to cycle breathe, that's why it sounded weak. So I was real happy with that. So I experimented around with those designs. That's what I ended up with, this cave design. When I went to the lower baffle, it didn't seem to lose a ton of power. And allowed me to move from the fiber reed to the Legier. The Legiers are a little chirpy. Not as bad as cane, but not as stable as the fiber reed. So again, this is a Legier 2.5. So I like the tone out of the Legiers better than the fiber reed. And if you don't have the high baffle near the tip, you don't need to resort to the fiber reed to, keep away from the chirps. This works real nice. I was going to play, just for reference, this Wave mouthpiece with a cane reed. I'm also using my own ligature designs. When you see these stringy things, these are made out of 3D printed pieces as well as some cord and some hardware. And they're a little bit more trouble to put on than, let's say, a Rovner ligature, but after a while you get used to it, how to do it. And they respond fine. Respond great. Here's that same Van Doren 3 reed that's been trimmed up a little on the Wave mouthpiece. It's this. it has good sound, but now I'm going to switch. I have another, this is what I call a Cav2. It's pretty much plays for me the same as the Cave mouthpiece, only it's even a lower baffle, but I think it's very similar. That's the Wave that was chirpy. Same cane reed I'm going to put on this Cav2 actually, but so this is the kind of mouthpiece I think you need if you want to pursue cane. So it might chirp occasionally, but you see it's a lot more stable than the high baffle. So I'll illustrate the differences, and you know, that's one of my main conclusions. You can use cane, but low baffle near the tip is what you need, and you don't lose a ton of power from that. So, very good. What else am I going to try? That's the Cav2, the Cave. I guess my last one that I was going to try, well, this is neat. Now, from my days on sax and bari sax, I know that a fiber cell reed, not a fiber reed, but a synthetic fiber cell reed, is resistance to chirps. Problem is they don't make a bass or a contrabass, a bass sax or a contrabass clarinet reed. You're limited to bari sax reeds. So I made a wave mouthpiece with a bari sax rail width and tip, and that's what I have here, so that I could try a fiber cell reed on it. And I made it a wave just to see if I'd get chirps on it, and it works pretty good. So this is a number 2 fiber cell. I've tried 2.5s and 3s on sax. I found that the softer fiber cells tend to be buzzy, but it doesn't seem to be that bad on here. So this is a 2. So of course you can use other bari sax reeds too, but I did this because I wanted to pair the high baffle wave with a reed that doesn't chirp. And this probably, I could say, might sound a little better than the fiber reed. You know, still a synthetic reed, but you know, it's a duck bill, very small in the mouth. Now you're smaller bite as well as width, so very comfortable. So that's a workable solution also, with a fairly long facing on it. So like I said, one of my future goals might be to explore sounding more like a bass clarinet, but as of right now, stability and projection and a decent tone were my goals, and That's what I think I've found in my cave design. I don't think I'll be needing any more projection than that, but if I do, there's these other design combinations I've come up with. So I am selling these, but I don't plan to sell a bunch. It's like an orphan mouthpiece project, and there's just not a big market for all this stuff. But you know, I'm a fan of the horn and want to help out some other players if I can. After this, I may take on like a C soprano mouthpiece, which is, there's not many of them around that are inexpensive. I've already done a reed trumpet mouthpiece, so you know, those are my 3 orphan mouthpiece ideas that I had planned to work on. So hope you were able to take away something from this. You know, the main conclusion being, if you got to use a high baffle mouthpiece, you need a reed that's chirp proof, but you can you don't have to. You can stick with the lower baffles and choose whatever reed you would like. So for me, that's a Leger paired with a concave mouthpiece design.